Hello and welcome to Get Informed, America, the show that breaks through the mainstream media box to bring you real smart news. Hi, I'm Dave Okenquist, and joining me is the smartest man I know, the editor of InformedAmerican.com and a contributor to WallStreetWireNews.com, Mr. Rodney Johnson. Rodney, good morning.
Morning, Dave.
Rodney, you're looking a little scruffy today. What's going on?
Well, I decided to go with the beard, after Thanksgiving. And so in a couple of weeks, it'll look like something other than just a hobo, right?
How do you work up the courage to shave it? Because I've had this for about 6 years, and I just don't. I'm terrified of the idea of losing it. So
I got to tell you, Dave, you actually had it longer than that. I think it's been 8 to 9 years. Yeah, we've been working together a long time. But no, I shave mine, when it gets to springtime, and it gets hot down here in the South, and so I have no problem with that at all.
Well, I can't wait to see how that beard evolves in the coming weeks.
Gray. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do gray, but that's okay. I'm comfortable.
Okay. Excellent. All right, Rodney, without further, do you have anything else before I get into the topics you don't know about? Do you have any side questions for me or anything like that?
No, let's jump right in.
Okay. All right, Ronnie, the United Kingdom became the first country to authorize the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine. Yep. And they say they could be rolling this out as early as next week. But Ronnie, the United States, the FDA has not cleared the vaccine yet. And then we got some other news that there may be some supply issues from Pfizer, that they may only be able to deliver on half of their estimated 100 million doses. So first question to you, Rodney. Why is the FDA taking so long? And when this thing finally does get approved, will there enough vaccines to go around?
Well, I can't pretend to know all the inner workings of the FDA. They do have a protocol, which, by the way, they have expedited at some incredibly accelerated rate, because this is coming to market in 10 months, whereas typically it takes more like a decade. Yeah. And so they're walking a fine line. If they just said, look, let's do it, go roll it out, make it happen. How many people are going to say, that's not tested, and so I'm not going to take it, which would defeat the purpose? And I don't know the answer, but clearly that's weighing on people's minds. Yeah. There are people that don't like vaccines in general and don't take them. That's one group. But there's another group that's pretty smart saying, hey, wait a second. We normally test these things for years, and this one's been tested for months. And so there's a logic there. And so if the FDA is now telling you, no, it's okay, you don't need years of testing, then anyone with a brain should look and go, then what about those years you took for all of history? Was that wrong? And so there's that line they're walking to say, we're doing our due diligence, we're coming at this as safely and effectively as possible, and yet we're getting it through the system at this breakneck speed. And so I think they're trying to weigh both of those things to make sure that when it does come out the door, that people actually take it, because that's the big thing. It doesn't do any good if people don't take it once it gets here.
Right, exactly. Now, they have in both countries, the UK and here in the United States, we have a schedule for who can get it first. And it basically comes down to healthcare workers, people like that, and then the vulnerable populations, and then sort of the regular Joe. How far out do you think we are from the regular Joe, someone like you and I, having a chance to get a hold of getting a dose of the vaccine?
Oh, I mean, from what I read, we're 45 days, but it really is going to depend more on where you live. I was listening to a piece with a health official from Indiana, and they appear to be just literally weeks, 2-3 weeks away from, once it rolls out, from moving from healthcare professionals to the at-risk population to the general public. And so because it's being divided among the states, and then the states decide how to do it, it's really all about your state official. Mm-hmm. And so if you're in a state with, a lot of people who are at risk, state of Florida, right? A very high number of people who are elderly, then I would think the general population, like you, is quite some time from it. But in a younger population, I'm in the state of Texas, probably not so far.
Yeah, well, I'm in no rush to go out and get that, Rodney. I was in that second camp you mentioned
Imagine
earlier.
that, right?
Yeah. Now, one thing that may push people on the fence to getting this vaccine is something that came out, and I'm curious now as we shift just a little bit further on this, is news came out yesterday, which is if you get the vaccine, you're going to get one of these, which is a COVID-19 vaccination record card. Now, this making people a little bit nervous, Rodney, because now they feel like they're going to be tracked. But well, one, there's a lot going on with the card. What it does is it tells you what you got when you had it, and then when maybe because this Pfizer vaccine, and I believe the Moderna one as well, is also, it needs to be given in 2 stages. So you'll administer it on January 1st, and then your next scheduled one is, I don't know, February 1st.
A month later.
Yeah, call it that, or whatever it is. But the CDC will be keeping a record of this. They may have your name, and then this card may become your societal hall pass if it comes to that. Do you see that coming as well? Where you can't get it. Maybe employment is tied to having a vaccination card, or being able to rent an apartment or something like that in the name of public safety. You find any of those privacy concerns worthwhile? Or I see you shaking your head. So
I don't see it because we have to remember this thing is going to move fast, right? Not only we have to keep in mind that we know of 1 in 8 to 1 in 10 cases. And so at 14 million cases, we're over 100 million now cases in the United States, or a third of our entire population. And by the way, that population includes all the kids. Mm-hmm. And so we're moving toward herd immunity at speed. Now, it's not today, not tomorrow, but call it, I don't know, the end of next year. And so all of these things are going to kind of fall away as more people get it, and we have the vaccine working through the system. And so and we have therapeutics come along, which of course we're not even talking about, the Eli Lilly therapeutics and others that are going to come along, that once we have widespread therapeutics, people are no longer dying from it. And so it becomes just one more thing you go get a shot and you move on. But the whole idea of you have a card, that card is just as good as the card stock that comes out of my laser printer. And so the thing that would happen a day after that card showed up in the public space is somebody would scan it with a high resolution scanner, and everybody on the planet would copy it and put their name on it. And so unless it is an ID card that has a magnetic strip that you can check against a database to verify something, it's going to be meaningless because it would be immediately copied.
Yeah, no, great point there. So you don't see society splintering between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated?
No, I don't. I see that as a nice dystopian novel, but it's not going to work out.
Roddy, as something we mentioned before over the past couple of weeks was this idea of you can't trust. I believe President-elect Biden said this himself, and this was floated around in the media by many people, that you can't trust the vaccine because it was developed under the bad orange man's administration. But now President Obama, former President Bush, and former President Clinton have all said they're going to get the vaccine. So that could be a boost for public confidence, right?
It could. I mean, the politics of it are, I don't pay that much attention to it. We had a number of politicians saying they wouldn't take it because it was developed under Trump and he had pushed it so fast. And as you pointed out, they're now going, oh, well, of course you should, right? And so guess what? One more duplicitous statement or hypocritical statement from a politician. It doesn't move the needle of things that are interesting to talk about. I'll tell you that.
Okay, well, then let me just close with this. When history is written, who gets credit for the vaccine, Trump or Biden?
Pfizer. And so, well, but to that point, and this is actually a big point. This is a really big point.
Okay.
We talk about the politician at the top being responsible for or driving, and it's rarely the case. The president of the United States is the administrator of the nation. He's the chief executive. He can't make laws. Right. He can't do much of anything internally. He can commit troops for a very limited time and then has to get authorization from Congress. But there are so many articles being written about democracy being threatened by Trump, which is just ludicrous because democracy isn't the president. Democracy is, of course, the system that we built. And the system is built to where we have a rule of law. And so Trump can say or do anything, as can Biden or Obama or anybody else, right? But then they have to get it through the courts, who are routinely saying no. It's just no. And so there are so many things that happen that people say, well, it's because of this one person, which is just silly. I mean, the drug companies had to develop the health officials had to bring it in. It had to be tested, all these things. And so if you want to see who was responsible for it, go to Congress, who approved some dollars for Operation Warp Speed, which put billions of dollars up so that biotechs and pharmaceuticals could develop. And then it came through at a very fast rate. Was President Trump part of that? You bet he was. He deserves straight up credit, full stop with a period, for putting the system in place that allowed this to be done at speed, where biotechs and pharmaceuticals were comfortable committing the billions of dollars because they knew they were going to get money back. But in terms of somebody who did it, it's not one guy. One guy will not set up or take down the nation.
Excellent. Good to see you get fired up about that, Rodney.
Well, I'm reading so many articles of people saying we barely escaped the end of the democracy, which is just, sheer idiocy. And so it's that old guy who whistles in North Dakota to keep the crocodiles away, right? He's doing a heck of a job because there are no crocodiles in North Dakota. But it's just a silly argument to start with.
I hadn't heard of that one, so thank you for that illustration.
You can add one more to your repertoire of things you break out when people say something stupid.
Excellent. Right, let's shift gears a little bit to a new Fintech IPO story here from Wall Street Wire News, maybe a potential investment opportunity for our viewers. There's a new wave of digital payments without interest. Interest-free payments, Rodney, sounds too good to be true. In our increasingly cashless world, the age of digital transactions could be undergoing yet another revolution, making large-scale purchases more attainable for average customers. The financial technology company Affirm will soon go public and trade under the ticker symbol AFRM, which currently allows e-commerce customers, Rodney, to split purchases into installments for which qualified customers can be paid interest-free. Now, I have seen this particularly on Walmart and many online retailers. No matter what the purchase is, big or small, I get the offer to split up the purchase into many monthly payments spread out over a couple of years. I mean, even a $20 hammer or whatever it is, do you want to pay $2.50 for 48 months? but the point is here, this seems to be a massive trend, and I think something that's here to stay. And maybe a company like Affirm, who would be competing with maybe PayPal, would be the next biggest competition for this sort of interest-free payment thing. Do you agree with me, Rodney, that this is here to stay, and that a company like Affirm going public could be an opportunity for our readers and investors and viewers?
I haven't looked at Affirm. If you have interest-free payments, but first of all, there is no such thing. What you have is payments with some rate. And if the rate is very low, then what you're getting is a discount from the retailer for the sale of the product that then becomes the interest to the company. And so with interest rates so incredibly low right now, I can see how this would work, but it has to be coupled with a high level of discernment of the client, because the person who is, you're always balancing non-payment against interest, right? Yep. And so you need enough people to repay to where the interest you earn will cover all the people who don't pay. And so I haven't looked at this to see who covers the non-payment group, because if you're buying a $200 air compressor over 2 years with no interest and you stop paying at the end of 8 months, right? Well, do they repossess the air compressor and then sell it on the secondary market? No, they simply write it off. And so who covers that? And so if they've found a way to do this, I would be surprised that it can beat the laws of math. I think it's all about very low interest rates and high quality clients. And I would think that's a limited business in time. If it becomes a useful business, or rather a profitable business, then they're going to attract something really big called competition. And it's going to come from people who are already in our pockets, like Visa and MasterCard and PayPal and Square. And so I would think that Affirm, if it does show the way of something new, will simply just be this shining light for a moment and then fade because somebody buys them or they just stamp them out of existence.
Okay, well, excellent analysis there. So keep an eye on Affirm, see what happens, and then if this is a growing space, then maybe they may get nudged out by some of the big boys. Great stuff, Rodney. Now I want to move quickly because a couple of things I want to hit on. So I'm going to shift gears again. Sticking with the markets. Now, we don't normally talk about the entertainment industry too much here, Rodney, but I think this was of note. Warner Brothers announced that it was going to put its entire 2021 slate on its HBO Max streaming service, which is being released on the same day released on as theaters. If I've In other words, I know I totally butchered that, but for example, Wonder Woman.
You did, but we get it. They're all going to come out the same day in theaters and on the streaming service.
Yes. So Rodney, on Christmas Day, if you want to watch Wonder Woman 1984, for example, you don't have to go out to that theater. You can just watch it on your streaming on the HBO Max streaming app. Now, this is a big blow to theaters. AMC's freaking out. Their stock tanked 16%. I would venture a guess, Rodney, that you would not recommend movie theater stocks at this time.
No, and going along with that, I wouldn't recommend real estate stocks that depend on things like this either, right?
Yeah.
But Warner has to do what's right for Warner, and it's like Disney. Starting their streaming service, they were just in front of COVID. They couldn't have had better timing with their theme parks losing money, hand over fist and everything else.
Yeah.
And so people who have these libraries, be it old titles or brand new titles. They've got to make money off of them. And with people stuck at home by choice or by, mandate now, like in LA, by golly, they're looking for something to do. So give them a new movie, for goodness sake. Shoot it out the door. Yeah.
Now, I don't know I don't have the numbers behind this, and your points are well taken. But from Warner Brothers' perspective, I mean, they're the studio that's producing the movie and sending it out, and they need to recoup the cost too. It seems curious to me that they believe they can make up enough simply from monthly subscriptions, as opposed to. Some of these movies are supposed to be blockbusters, pulling in $500, $600, $700, $800 million. I don't see how that math works out. Could this just be a temporary thing, knowing that the theaters could be down for a bit but come back? I mean, we see something different next year. I mean, does that jive with you? I mean, the studio's got to get its cash just as much as the movie theater does, and nothing has been proven that like the release with Mulan on Disney Plus, that they're going to be able to make nearly enough money that they would from a theater release.
Well, I don't think it replaces the theater, certainly not at a 1-for-1, but it does get them some money on the door at a time where cash is hard to come by. Mm-hmm. And so, you have these titles in the can. I mean, like Wonder Woman 1984, I think was slated for the summer and then pushed back.
I think that's right. Yeah.
And so there are some other things where they're watching it not fade perhaps, but I think they want to take advantage of the opportunity the best they can. And Christmas is a huge time for movie going. And so it's not as if they chose a random weekend in October or something. They're trying to match this up with a normal time where people would be watching movies. And so I think it makes sense. I don't think this is a permanent transition. I don't think this is, what's going to happen for, like I said, all of time. I think instead, this is just what they're doing during the pandemic. And then they're waiting for that time when theaters come back online next year.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Yeah, that's sort of where I was headed with it. All right, let's do a sort of rapid fire. I have 3 items I want to hit on. We also had a jobs report this morning, Rodney. Payrolls, 245,000 jobs added, which was way under expectations of 470 thereabouts. 245 is just a regular month, certainly not one you would expect to have during an economic recovery. We were warned of a Q4 slowdown. Is this it, Rodney?
Yeah, this is. And there were actually some worse numbers underneath. I mean, the 245, like you said, it's a little less than or a little more than half of the expectation. The real issue was participation rate. Labor participation rate fell. It's back near the 70-year lows. People are dropping out because they're having to deal with their kids doing school at home. People are dropping out because they're caring for a relative. We're just seeing labor force participation down, which is why the unemployment rate fell from 6.8 to 6.7. It's not because anything really good's going on in the economy. And it's mushy, right? And so that's unfortunate, but you can see it. Retail got smacked the hardest last month, as you might expect, because we're seeing the lockdowns reinstated, and that's expected to grow. I mentioned it in passing a few minutes ago. LA County essentially said, hey, or the city of LA, you're required to stay home. They issued a mandate. You're not allowed to leave your house.
No walking, driving, or public transportation.
And there's a long list of exemptions. I mean, so, I'm not saying that, every person is locked inside from the outside. But if you're a healthcare worker, if you work at a grocery store, blah, blah, blah. And so certainly there are a lot of people out, but the whole idea that a government official would say you're not allowed to leave your house.
Nice.
That's pretty tough business. And I expect that to spread to other large cities pretty quickly.
Yeah. All right, Rodney, something you wrote about on informedamerican.com, a California pastor who rebranded his church as a strip club in order to get around some of the restricted some of the California rules on places of worship. Maybe have gotten some relief by the Supreme Court. I know you also followed up and reported on that as well. So this is definitely a win for religious liberty, isn't it?
It is. And so it's very interesting. I mean, the Supreme Court is, it's the thing, right? It's the top of the judicial branch. And so it is the top of that rule of law arbiter we talked about a little bit ago. And so there was a California order that had come up to the Supreme Court, and they had said, hey, no, we think it's okay that they're holding religious organizations to the standards of these others. That's not a problem. That was a 5-4 decision. But that was when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was still alive and on the court. Well, a New York law came up for review, and it was decided the other direction after Ruth Bader Ginsburg, once, Amy Coney Barrett was on the court, and it was decided 5-4 the other direction. And so they remanded the California case after the New York case was decided in favor of churches. They remanded the California case back down to the lower court and said, hey, man, take another look considering our latest ruling. And so you're going to see this happen. It does happen. And so the rule of law is there, and they're going to have to abide by the fact that religious freedom actually exists in the Constitution.
Yep. Just for my part, it just took way too long to get there, as we have to wait for a second round of lockdowns to get our freedoms back. In a sense. As
they say, the wheels of justice turn slowly, but they do turn.
That's true. All right, Rodney, another thing from Informed American, new climate czar has private jet, multiple homes, and cars in family, but don't say he owns them. And it's referring to what I will call one of the ultimate swamp creatures, former Senator John Kerry, former candidate for president. He's now tapped to be Biden's climate czar. And now, see, the problem, you might think that someone who's advocating for lower carbon emissions would not be jet setting around and owning things that have more of a potential to ruin the environment than maybe anything you and I could ever do in our lifetimes. But thankfully, Rodney, our fact checkers are there to say no, he actually doesn't own them. Those actually belong to his wife. This is good, isn't it, Rodney? It's good to clear that up. Do you agree?
It's so silly. I mean, it's once again, an organization twisting itself into knots so that it can, disprove something here, or at least call it into question. Like you say, John Kerry, well, you didn't say it, but he's married to the heiress of the Heinz family. And so they're worth, I don't know, $1 billion or whatever it is. Yeah. And they have a prenup. I mean, married late in life, right after she was widow. And so, they have a prenup, so she owns the 5 houses, the private jet, and until recently, the luxury yacht. But it's not like he doesn't travel on them. He's not out there saying, hey, you really should sell this. It's not good for the planet, blah, blah, blah. And actually, that raises a better question. And so why would you hire this man as the climate czar when he can't even convince his wife to get rid of the things that the climate? And so if his stroke is so low, he can't even, have some impact in his own life, then what's he going to do for the rest of us? I don't think of him as a swamp creature. He certainly served admirably in many places, but I don't agree with how he does things. I will always think of him as the architect of the Iran agreement, which was clearly flawed because the Iranians don't adhere to anything. And so I look at it and think this isn't going to go anywhere good, but you're going to see a lot of regulation come out in terms of climate from a Biden administration. And it's going to make things more expensive in your world. No
that's
question.
Great. Good times. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, just to let you know that's coming.
Well, this whole thing this fact checking. I just want a final thing here. This fact checking cottage industry is a real interesting one, and it's something similar came out for Biden's to be named press secretary, Jen Psaki. And there was some controversy about her being in Russia and said she was wearing a hat with a hammer and sickle. But thankfully, and I'll just share this quickly. Here is a picture of that. But thankfully, USA Today, and look, also with, swamp creature John Kerry, there she is wearing the hat with a hammer and sickle with Lavrov, I believe is the foreign minister of Russia. But USA Today was there to come in and call it just sort of lacking good context because she was gifted the hat and then she put it on. Of course, the claim was she was wearing the hat. So, Rodney, is the industry of fact checking purely exists to run cover for Democrats? That's the final question of the day.
I don't know that it exists just for the benefit of Democrats, but it has moved from what was the Poynter Institute, actually where you are in St. Petersburg many years ago, to let's thin slice it to where it makes whatever we want look better than it is, because as you say, the claim was she was wearing a hat with a hammer and sickle. And when you look at the picture, she's wearing a hat with a hammer and sickle. And so there was no check of the fact. There was an attempt to skew the fact, which is no longer fact checking. And so I think that's where we are, right? Like everything else, something starts with maybe a decent idea, but it quickly runs to make it look better for me and mine.
Yeah. So, oh man, you have me absolutely rolling today. Thank you, Rodney.
I'm just helping you out.
Always good to get a good laugh in the Friday morning or whatever. I don't know. You're just cracking me up. Rodney, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you all for watching. I would love it if you would share this video, hit the like button if you're watching it on Facebook. Also, please subscribe to this channel if you're watching on YouTube. Also, hit that thumbs up button. And then, Rodney, if they're looking for political news, they can go to informedamerican.com. If they're looking for some more financial stuff, wallstreetwirenews.com. And if they head on over to those sites, what kind of stories can they expect to be seeing over the weekend and the coming days?
I think it's going to be the stimulus. I mean, the reason that the jobs numbers didn't move the market this morning, because you would think they would, right, being lower, is the world, or the economic world, is focused on the new stimulus in the United States. Mitch McConnell's down at the $500 billion, which is actually completely paid for by sweeping unused stimulus funds from the original act, the CARES Act. But a bipartisan group has come together on a $908 billion package that Schumer and Pelosi are backing, as is Biden. And so we'll see what happens. I mean, Mitch McConnell is probably going to come that way because Trump also wants to sign something. And so he's the holdout. Whether he should or not is up for people to discuss. But I think that he's going to come to something on this, and we'll probably get something on that next week. And so that's definitely going to be the big story.
I will keep an eye on that. As of now, there is a blackout on stimulus discussions until there's actually a bill voted on and passed. So we will certainly see. All right. For Rodney Johnson, I'm Dave Okenquist telling you to get informed, America.
You've been listening to Get Informed, America, brought to you by the Informed American Radio Network. Please like and subscribe today in order to get new exclusive weekly episodes. Any questions, thoughts, or comments can be sent directly to info@informedamerican.com. And don't forget to visit informedamerican.com to keep up with real, smart news. Until next time, fight fake news and find common ground.